All right. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to finish this segment before Maghrib. And that way, are you guys after the Isha, you're stopping, I assume? Is that what we're doing? That's the plan? Okay, so then what? 9:20 it says. All right, so we'll probably have an hour after Maghrib. So we'll probably start this but not finish it. We'll complete in the morning. All right, okay. All right, let's see. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Are we good? Okay, so what the plan is, inshallah ta'ala, is to do a segment on nurturing the ties of blood relations before Salat al-Maghrib. We're going to do that, cover that topic before Salat al-Maghrib. Then after the Maghrib, we'll begin compassion and kindness between husbands and wives, but probably won't be able to complete it. Now that particular segment will have an accompanying slideshow, and I'm assuming that we're going to invite them if they choose. The sisters are invited to come to the upper hall so they can actually see the slideshow if they so choose. They're not obligated by any means, but they could come to see those slides. And then we'll probably do half of that between al-Maghrib and al-Isha, and then complete in the morning. After that, that'll be followed by a workshop where we'll actually have some handouts and some work that you'll actually have to do as a follow-up to this particular program, or particular segment, I should say, in the program, because of its importance. Okay? So it's not just enough to be lectured to. No, you have to show me that you learned something, because this is something that we definitely need to go home and apply in our households. So with that, we'll go ahead and cover the topic of nurturing the ties of blood relations. And I'll give you the bullets that we're going to cover before we begin. The first one is definitions. So there's some definitions that we want to provide. Number 2, the status of family ties. Number 3, what deeds constitute maintaining or nurturing the ties of kinship. And last but not least, nurturing the ties of kinship is not predicated on reciprocation. Not predicated on reciprocation. So with that said, after clarifying the rights of parents and the danger of neglecting or intentionally violating their rights, we turn to the rights which follow those rights, the rights of parents, in priority and importance. And that is that of the blood relatives. Now the term, as we said, we're going to give you some definitions. The term commonly used by scholars to refer to blood relatives is ar-rahim, or al-arham. Ar-rahim, or al-arham, which literally means the womb or wombs, and is an allusion to the ties of kinship that result from marital relations and childbirth. So basically, when it is said the womb or the wombs, it's referring to what? The relations which come as a result of what? Marital relations and childbirth. طيب, this topic is traditionally discussed by the scholars in terms of silat al-rahim, either silat al-rahim, which is maintaining and joining the ties of kinship. So when they talk about al-rahim, the scholars are either going to be talking about silat al-rahim, joining the ties, maintaining the ties of kinship, which Islam obligates, or qatiyat al-rahim. Qatiyat al-rahim, severing the ties of kinship, which Islam strictly forbids. So when they talk about al-rahim, they're either going to talk about silat al-rahim, joining, or qatiyatul rahim, severing, which Islam strictly forbids. And people are generally considered, another definition which is important, to be on one side or the other side of the topic. So a person, as it relates to al-rahim, is either wasil, someone who what? Joins and maintains the ties of kinship, or qati', one who severs, boycotts, and disowns, right? So it's going to be one of two people, either someone who joins the ties or someone who severs them. طيب, the status of family ties in Islam. Status of family ties in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى. This is Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, verse 36. He says, worship Allah alone and associate no partners with Him in His worship. Be good to your parents and be good to your kinsfolk. As mentioned previously, this verse is known as Ayat al-Huquq al-Ashara. And in it, Allah first mentions His right, then follows it with the right of the parents. And then He follows that with the right of the blood relatives, as if to say, after His right, no right has more right to be observed than that of the parents, and after their right, no right has more right to be observed than that of one's blood relatives. We also have the ayah in Surah An-Nisa, which is the first ayah in the surah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. Says, and fear Allah through whom you demand your mutual rights, and do not cut the relations of the wombs. Allah has coupled here the command to fear Him and to be conscious of Him with the command to be kind and cordial towards one's relatives, and prohibiting at the same time severing the ties with them. In this way, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that just fulfilling His right is not what's required. It's not like all you have to do is obey Allah, worship Allah, that's all that matters. No, Allah is actually saying that you haven't really feared me, you haven't really fulfilled my rights unless you fulfill the rights of your relatives. Right? We also have the ayah in Surah Al-Ra'd, which is the 13th surah, verses 21 through 25. And I'm going to read it in English just to save time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and those who join what Allah has commanded that it be joined, which means it's Surah Al-Ra'd, Salim, the 13th surah, 21 to 25. La bas. Allah says, and those who join what Allah has commanded it be joined, which means they maintain good relations with their kinsfolk and do not sever the ties of kinship. For such there is a good end, gardens of Eden. They shall enter, and along with them those who acted righteously from among their fathers and their wives and their offspring. And angels shall enter unto them from every gate, saying, Salamun alaykum. For you persevered in patience. Excellent indeed is the final home. Then he goes on to say, and those who break the covenant of Allah after its ratification and sever that which Allah has commanded to be joined, meaning they sever the bonds of kinship and do not treat their relatives well and work mischief in the land, on them is the curse and for them is a miserable end. Now in this ayah, you notice Allah praises those who join the ties of kinship with their blood relations. And He promises them paradise. And as an additional reward, so it's like, for joining the ties of kinship, you're going to be given paradise. But Allah doesn't stop there. Not only that, I'm going to reward you by admitting what? Admitting your parents and your wives and your offspring into paradise as well as a reward for you joining the ties of kinship. So basically, Allah promised the person who joined the ties of kinship that He would enter them into paradise. But He didn't stop there. He said, because you join the ties of kinship, I'm going to admit your parents and your wives and your offspring into paradise as an additional reward for the good deed that you did. Okay? So suppose they entered paradise and they didn't deserve to be on the same level. Allah would do what? Would promote them to your level because of what? You joining the ties of kinship. But at the same time, He threatens those who sever the ties of kinship and disown their relatives and disregard their rights with a miserable end, meaning punishment in the hellfire. Okay? We also have the ayah in Surah Muhammad, which is the 47th surah, verses 22 to 23, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهَلْ عَسَيْتُمْ إِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ أَن تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَتُقَطِّعُوا أَرْحَامَكُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ لَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهُ فَأَصَمَّهُمْ وَعَمَى أَبْصَارَهُمْ. He says, would you then, if you were given the authority, do mischief in the land and sever your ties of kinship? Those who do this, they are those whom Allah has cursed. So He has made them deaf and blinded their sight. So now here Allah is threatening those who sever the ties of kinship with a curse, with His curse. Also the deafening of their ears and the blinding of their sight. Deafening of their ears, what does that mean? It means He will prevent them from hearing the truth and benefiting from it. So a person can be punished by severing the ties of kinship by what? By the truth is all around him, but he can't hear it. Or he hears it and he's unable to what? To follow it. What is intended by sight is not the sight of what? Of the eyes. Doesn't mean if you cut the ties of kinship, Allah will cause you to go blind. But rather the sight of what? Of the heart. The sight of the heart and its ability to what? To distinguish between truth and falsehood and follow what? The correct path. This means that Allah will disable the heart's ability to perceive correctly, such that the person will perceive falsehood as truth and truth as falsehood. This is Surah Muhammad, the 47th Surah, 22 to 23. So now ask yourself, how can a person ever hope to achieve any spiritual good when these paths, hearing the truth and seeing it, recognizing it as truth, have been what? Have been blocked. So Allah is telling you the danger you're putting your faith in. There's a huge threat to your faith and your practice of Islam if you sever what? Sever the ties of kinship. ثم بعد ذلك, you have the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, collected by Bukhari and Muslim, on the authority of Abu Sufyan, Sakhr ibn Harb, who he narrates his meeting with Heraclius, or Herakl. So he narrates this meeting, and in the narration of the meeting, he says that Herakl was asking him different questions. So one of the questions that he asked him, what does he order you to do? Meaning the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, what does he ask you to do? So the Prophet ﷺ said, he replied, he says, worship Allah alone. اعبد الله وحده ولا تشركوا به شيئا واتركوا ما يقول آباؤكم ويأمرنا بالصلاة والصدق وإيش؟ Can't even read my own handwriting. والإنفاق والصلة. So he says, he commands us, worship Allah alone, and do not associate anything with Him and abandon what our ancestors said. He commands us to pray, to speak the truth, to be chaste, and to maintain ties. Wal-afaf, not infaq, al-afaf. I'm asif. Can't read my own handwriting. Al-afaf, and to maintain the ties of kinship. Chastity and to maintain the ties of kinship. So the Prophet came with what? With a sila, right? So this hadith alerts us that maintaining the ties of kinship is a fundamental aspect of what? Of Islamic teachings, which was a point of emphasis of the Prophet at the early stages of his mission. Then بعد ذلك, another hadith by Bukhari Muslim from Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ informs that Allah made a promise to the womb. Does Allah break His promise, Shaykh Juan? Allah doesn't break His promise. Inna Allah la yukhlifu al-mi'ad. Allah never breaks His promise. He made a promise to the womb that He would join those who join its ties and cut off those who sever its ties. The Prophet said in the hadith, Allah created the creation And when he had finished creating them, the womb stood up and said, this is a stance of one seeking refuge from you from being severed. Allah said, would it satisfy you if I were to join the one who joins you and cut off the one who severs you? The womb said yes, whereupon Allah said, and thus it will be for you. ثم بعد ذلك, another version of the same hadith from Aisha, collected by Shaykhan, the Prophet said, الرحم معلقة بالعرش تقول من وصلني وصله الله ومن قطعني قطعه الله. Said kinship or rahim is suspended from the throne and says, Allah will connect with all those who maintain my ties, and Allah will sever his connection with all those who sever my ties. طيب, another hadith tells us that our relatives can either be our key to paradise or our ticket to the hellfire. Another hadith tells us your relatives can be the key to paradise or a one-way ticket to the hellfire. Bukhari and Muslim have collected from Abu Ayyub Khalid ibn Zayd al-Ansari that a man said, O Messenger of Allah, inform me of an action that will enter me into the garden and keep me away from the fire. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, worship Allah and do not associate anything with him. Perform the prayer and pay the zakat and maintain the ties of kinship. Man asked him, how can I get to paradise and avoid the hellfire? Prophet listed a few things, and one of them was what? Maintain the ties of kinship. At the same time, in the hadith of Abu Muhammad Jubair ibn Mut'im, the Messenger of Allah, he said, لا يدخل الجنة قاطع. He said, someone who severs the ties of kinship will not enter the garden. Okay? So severing the ties of kinship can keep you out of paradise. In addition to the impact that nurturing the ties of blood relations or failing to do so can have in the hereafter, the Prophet ﷺ informed us that it can impact your life in this world. It's not just, you sever the ties of kinship and it harms you in the hereafter. No, it can harm you in this world. As the Prophet said in the hadith like Bukhari Muslim on the authority of Anas, he said, من أحب أن يبسط له رزقه وينسأ له في أثره فليصل رحمه. He said, he who desires that his provisions be increased or that his lifespan be extended, then let him maintain the ties of kinship. So in addition to the reward of Allah in the hereafter, one will receive these earthly rewards as well. Abundant provisions and the length of what? Of one's life. Our blood relatives, ya ikhwan wa akhawat, are more entitled to our charity and generosity and giving. And this giving garners for us a double reward. If you're charitable to your relatives, you get a double reward. One reward is the reward of the charity itself. The other reward is what? A sila, join the ties of kinship. As we find the hadith of Salman ibn Amir, collected by Tirmidhi, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, sadaqah, given to a poor person is sadaqah. But to a relative it is both sadaqah and sila. It's both sadaqah and nurturing the ties of kinship. So these are some of the narrations, ya ikhwani, which tell us the status of joining the family ties in what? In the deen. And so you have to reflect upon these when the temptation is to what? Sever the ties. Or you feel that they have done something which justifies severing the ties. And this happens a lot. That people think, yeah, that's true, but he did this or she did that. Regardless of what he or she did, this is what Allah what? What Allah and His Messenger have said about joining the ties. ثم بعد ذلك, what deeds constitute the ties, join the ties of kinship? What deeds specifically do I do, and because I'm doing them, I'm considered to be a wasil and not a qati'? So what we find is that the Messenger of Allah and Allah Himself, they didn't specify what deeds will constitute the fulfillment of what? Of this obligation. Nor did they specify how this command should be fulfilled. Nor did they affix an amount of kindness. Okay, be kind to this what? This extent. And so when this happens in Islam, then that tells you that this command of Allah that hasn't been what? Specified, quantified, is something which is left to what? Al-urf. It's left to what? The customs and traditions and what is generally accepted as good or acceptable, appropriate amongst the people. So we have to join the ties of kinship in the way which what? Generally, customarily, people consider to be what? Join the ties versus cutting the ties. So for example, if you lived in the same city, the same locality as one of your uncles or your aunts, or one of your cousins, and you never visited them, you seldom called them, you seldom go by just to check on them and make sure that they're okay, in the urf, in the custom of the people, would that be considered sila? No, it wouldn't be considered sila with the people. So that means what? That would then be a violation of what? Join the ties of kinship. Okay? Suppose periodically, every couple of weeks or so, I actually go by and just say what? Hello. And ever so often, I'll actually invite them for dinner or go and what? Have tea. Okay? I call what? Every other day just to check on them. I drive by the house to make sure everything is okay. Even when they're not home, I'm just going to go by and what? Check on their place. You follow me? Would that be considered sila? Join the ties of kinship? Certainly. Okay? So basically the urf will determine. Suppose they live out of town. They live a couple states over. Okay? 5-hour, 6-hour drive. Okay? Would you be required to visit them once a week? Okay? And if you didn't visit them once a week, would that be considered a violation of silat al-rahim, maintain ties of kinship? No, wallah, of course not, because nobody expects you to what? To visit someone 5 hours, 6 hours away on a what? Weekly basis. So again, but you should do what? Call them, right? Or do something to what? Maybe text. Do something to connect with them and to ask about them, ask about their conditions, etc. So again, the urf is what's going to determine what is or isn't considered join the ties of kinship. But last but not least, we'll conclude with this, is that join the ties with relatives is not predicated on them joining them as well. So what happens a lot of times is that for various circumstances, two family members may not be speaking. They may not be interacting, exchanging visits, etc. And one family member may consider the disinterest of the other family member as a justification for them not to try to maintain the ties of kinship. So it will be said, why don't you interact with your cousin? How come you guys don't talk to each other? How come you don't exchange visits? They say, oh, they cut me off, so, I don't deal with them. Okay, but it was their choice. That's what they'll say, as if that's a justification. But Muslim has a hadith on the authority of Abu Abdulrahman, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who reports that a man said, O Messenger of Allah, I have some relatives with whom I maintain relations, but they cut me off. I am good to them, but they treat me badly. I practice patience with them, while they behave ignorantly towards me. He said, the Prophet ﷺ, if you are as you have said, then it is as if you are feeding them hot embers. You will continue to have a helper from Allah against them as long as you remain doing that. So when you treat your relatives kindly and they treat you cruelly, they are earning what? Allah's anger. And you're earning Allah's reward. And this is what the deen wants you to do. This is what Allah wants you to do. Even the people who cut you off, we mentioned earlier, the ayah, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ, where Allah revealed this to the Prophet, and the Prophet said, مَا هَذَا يَا Jibreel? What is this? What's the meaning of this, O Jibreel? And Jibreel said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكَ أَن تَعْفُوَ عَنْ مَنْ ظَلَمَكَ وَتُعْطِي مَنْ حَرَمَكَ وَتَصِلْ مَنْ قَطَعَكَ. He said, Allah commands you to forgive your oppressor, give to the one who withheld from you, refused to give you, and to join the ties even with those who what? Who cut them off. The people who cut you off, you still what? Try to join the ties. So what the hadith teaches us is that the mistreatment and transgressions of our relatives is no excuse for severing the ties. They treat me badly, so I just want to cut them off. The Prophet said, no, if they treat you badly, still what? Join the ties. Number two, Allah supports the one who joins the ties against the one who severs them. Allah will what? Will assist and aid them. And last but not least, the consequence of greeting the kindness of relatives with cruelty is equivalent to eating what? Hot ashes. The person is inviting what? Hellfire on themselves by what? You have, for example, a relative, and sometimes what happens is things happen between relatives. It's just a reality of life. And maybe the person who is extending the olive branch, it is an olive branch, yeah, isn't it? That is the right adage, right? You extend the olive branch, which means what? You're extending what? This is a gesture of what? Peace. It's a peace offering, right? So maybe the relative who's extending the olive branch is the one who initially what? Transgressed. They did do something wrong. They legitimately were in the wrong, but now they're saying, I want to make peace. I'm sorry for what I did. If I transgressed against you, if I did you wrong, I apologize. I want to make amends, and I want to create some normalcy in our relationship, introduce normalcy into our relationship. And that relative who says, no, may Allah curse you. I won't accept your peace offering. I'll never forgive you. That relative who does that is actually doing what? He's eating hot ash, hot embers, and inviting the hellfire and the wrath of Allah and the anger of Allah upon themselves for refusing to make peace with their relatives. Allah wants relatives to be what? To be just that, to be relatives, to have a tight connection and to forgive and forget, etc. طيب. And that's pretty much what I wanted to mention about that subject. Any questions, comments, or complaints? And if not, we can actually start the husband and wife segment.
How many times do you go to those relatives and try to maintain some, peace with them and try to make peace with them? How many times do you go? I mean, I've done it, and they want to remain severed.
Well, see, that's the thing about the hadith. The hadith don't set a limit and say if you go 3 times, if you go 5 times, if you go 7 times. So you continue to try. You continue to try. And don't consider, because sometimes what happens is pride gets in the way. It's like you get tired of being humiliated. You get tired of being humiliated. You get tired of being humiliated. And so as a result, you say, I don't have to put myself through this. I've tried, and they're not interested. But there's no limit that's been set by Allah to say, okay, if you've done it this many times, you're absolved from any responsibility. You're excused. And you have to remember that at the end of the day, every time you go to the well, you're taking Allah's what? His reward. And at the end of the day, that's our goal, to get Allah's reward. So you continue to make effort. It's not the easiest thing. We're human beings. And you get tired of the door being slammed in your face, and you get tired of being humiliated. But you keep making effort, and you also bear in mind, and there's some consolation, although we never wish anything negative on anyone. We do have the consolation that that person, when they refuse all of your attempts to rejoin the ties of kinship, they're not hurting you in reality. They're hurting what? They're hurting themselves, yeah. تفضل يا شيخ.
Who falls into the ties of kinship?
Hey.
Relatives,
I mean, as long as they are blood relatives, that basically the womb is the source of the kinship and not necessarily marriage directly, marriage indirectly, because there will be relations and then there'll be what? A connection from the womb. But what I mean to say is this, is that a man marries a woman and she has relatives. Those relatives do not have the rights of rahim, like, for example, she has a brother. That brother of his wife is not like his blood brother. Do you follow what I'm saying? That blood brother has the right of silat al-rahim. Her brother doesn't have the right from him, the husband, of silat what? Al-rahim. Does he have a right, a general right because of marriage? Yeah, but that doesn't fall in the category of what? Al-rahim. So if a person is related to you somehow, some way through the womb. So for example, your dad's brother, who's your uncle, he has a son. That son is related to you through what? Through the womb. Through the womb. The womb of who? Your grandmother. Does that make sense? And your grandfather. So there's a womb connection there. So yeah, if there's a womb involved, then what? These are your relatives and they have the rights that we mentioned in this segment.
Well, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
If you got relatives, like I say, a couple states away or something,
Uh-huh.
and there's no problem between you, but you just don't call all the time.
Hey.
That's not severing the relationship.
No, we're not saying call all the time, but you should call periodically, yeah. You should. Yeah, you should try to be in touch with them. No question. Alaikum salam. Barakallahu feek.
Some of the things that prevent one person who tries to do good to establish the kinship, like you mentioned, is either he forgets or he gets busy,
Eh.
or there is this thing that they are not treating me well, so therefore there is no point in establishing the relationship. So what are 2 or 3 things that comes to the mind that it's like you have to strengthen yourself with? Three things, let's say. That one should remember to fight, because shaitan is there. Don't this and that. So shaitan is there, is going to be against you, is going to push you to not do the kinship. So what are 2 or 3 things that I can use, anybody can use, to strengthen themselves and fight that temptation to not establish the kinship? 2 or 3 things.
Well, I hope the ayat and the hadith would be what we would remind ourselves with, the ayat that we mentioned. فهل عسيتم أن توليتم أن تفسدوا في الأرض وتقطعوا أرحامكم أولئك الذين لعنهم الله وأصمهم أولئك الذين لعنهم الله وأصمهم وأعمى فأصمهم وأعمى أبصارهم. So I mean that right there, if you just remind yourself with that, are you going to sever the ties of kinship? The people who do that, لعنهم الله, Allah will curse them. فأصمهم, He will what? Deafen their ears. وَأَعْمَى أَبْصَارُهُمْ, and He will what? Blind their eyes. That right there, I remind myself of that look, I don't want to be from those people. And we have a lot of people like that who the truth is right there in front of them and they can't recognize it because they've done something for Allah to do what? To seal their heart, seal their hearing, blind their eyes. That's Surah Muhammad, the 47th Surah, verses I think we said 22, 23. 22 to 23, yeah. Also the hadith where the Prophet said that Allah promised the womb. He said in the hadith, he said, أما ترضين أن أصل من وصلك وأقطع من قطعك. He said, does it not please you that I should join the one who joins your ties, and sever the one who cuts off your ties? فقالت بلى, the womb, the rahim, she said, yes, indeed. فقال فذلك لك. He said, and that is for you. I'm going to do that for you. So that you remind yourself of that. You also remind yourself of the hadith. This hadith is Bukhari Muslim, Abi Hurairah is the Rawi, Bukhari Muslim. Last but not least, the one hadith we said, collected by Muslim, on the authority of Abdulrahman, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, in which he said that a man said, O Messenger of Allah, he said, إِنَّ لِي قَرَابَةً أَصِلُهُمْ وَتَقْطَعُونَنِي وَأَحْسِنْ إِلَيْهِمْ وَيُسِيئُونَ إِلَيَّ. And he said, وأحلم عنهم ويجحلون علي. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم لئن كنت كما قلت فكأنما فكأنما تسفهم المل ولا يزال معك من الله ظهير عليهم ما دمت على ذلك. So he said that I have some relatives, I maintain the ties of kinship with them, but they cut me off. I'm good to them, but they treat me badly. I practice patience with them while they behave ignorantly towards me. And the Prophet said, if this is how you really are with them, it is as if you are feeding them what? Hot embers. They're getting the sin, and you're getting Allah's reward. Not just His reward, but there's a dhahir. There's a guardian from Allah who will help you against them as long as you keep what? As long as you keep doing that. So this should be enough to what? To motivate us, I'm going to do this. I want that dhahir. I want somebody helping me to do good and protecting me against evil as long as I keep what? Keep doing that. طيب. تفضل يا شيخ.
You talked about parents,
Mhm.
about blood relations,
Mhm.
but what about in-laws, like father-in-law, mother-in-law?
I mean, they have a right to be respected and treated kindly, not because they are blood relatives, not because they're your parents, because they're your wife's parents. And being kind to them is an extension of what? Compassion, mercy, and kindness to what? To the wife. But they are not entitled to the same level of kindness and care that your actual blood relatives are entitled to. They're a level beneath them.
So how
Yeah.
does parents do the same thing?
Huh?
So
Same
the
thing.
wife's parents-
Yeah, she should respect, out of respect for the husband, respect his parents, but they're not her blood relatives. Yeah, there's no womb there.
What about an ex-wife?
Huh? Allah al-Musta'an. Yeah, she's not your relative, obviously. She's not your relative, but I mean, just as a human being and someone you shared time with, then yeah, you should be kind to her. Yeah. Even though you're mad and angry and bitter and resentful.
And more.
طيب تفضل في الوراء. Yeah. You got to call, you got to email, you got to write, you got to text, you Skype. Oh, what is it? I always make these funny comments. You've got to snapbook and face chat. That's a joke, man. I always do that on purpose. So yeah, so those are things that you do with those relatives, yeah, to the best of your ability. Allah musta'an. There was a question for the sisters, a little bit off topic, but we'll read it now because we have a little time.
On the topic here,
تفضل Yunus.
are you going to cover the rights of children too?
Yeah, I am. Inshallah. That's the plan, if the time permits. I think we're doing that right after husband and wife, wouldn't I?
Before.
Was it supposed to be before? Ajib. Okay, that's where I was like, man, we're getting, we're ahead of schedule. All right, Yunus, I will do it. But we'll have to do it tomorrow after the wedlock workshop. If you remind me, we'll do it then. All right. So from the sister, says, I need your advice. I rent a house to a person which I found out does not earn a halal living. Is it okay for me to continue to rent them the house? What should I do? طيب, when it comes to wealth that you receive from a second or third party, that wealth is either halal in and of itself or haram in and of itself. Okay? It's either going to be halal. It's either going to be, let's say it's haram. Okay, let me change that a little bit. The wealth that you receive from a second or third party, it's either going to be, if it's haram, it's either going to be haram in and of itself, or it's haram because of the way that the person earned it. You guys follow me? The wealth is haram in and of itself, or haram because of the way that the person earned it. If it's the first one, al-hurma tata'adda. If it's the first one, the hurma extends beyond the person themselves to what? To the recipient. If it's the second one, al-hurma la tata'adda. The hurma will not extend beyond the person who what? Who earned it. So, what do we mean by wealth which is haram in of itself? The wealth itself is something which Islam says is what? Haram. Like, a person owns several pig farms. Those farms are a type of what? Wealth. The animals themselves are a form of what? Wealth. They have value. If that wealth were given to you, hey, you did me a great favor, I want to give you a gift. I have 7 pig farms in Ohio, I'm going to give one to you. This wealth that's been given to you as a gift, at asl, the original rule of a gift is what? You can take it. But the gift itself, the wealth itself that's being given to you is what? It's haram in of itself. You guys follow me? So that hurma, because the wealth itself is haram, something that Islam prohibited, even though it has value, monetary value, that hurma tata'adda to the recipient. It's haram for them and haram for you. You with me? Everybody understand that? Like, suppose the wealth is haram because of the way the person earned it, but it itself is not haram. For example, if a person who works as a banker or as a broker and he works in derivatives and different types of complex financial services which are based in what? Interest or transactions which Islam prohibits. The wealth that he earns from this trade is what? It's haram. Haram for who? For him. This is haram earnings. Like, he goes out to a Muslim restaurant for dinner and pays for his dinner with what? His haram money that he earned through what? Haram means. That restaurant owner, is he supposed to refuse to say, oh, I can't take that because that money's what? Haram. Is he supposed to say that? Nah, where you got that from doesn't affect me. Because the money I'm earning from you is what? Is halal. The hurma of this money, la tata'adda. It doesn't what? Extend to me. It's haram. There's no blessing in it. There's no barakah in it for you because of the way you earned it. But me, I'm earning it what? Halal. I'm earning it halal. I gave you halal food. Okay? And now you owe me $35. Thank you very much. Cab driver. Muslim cab driver. This guy earns his money the way we said. Riba, alcohol, whatever. Prostitution, whatever. Gets a ride from a Muslim cab driver. Muslim cab driver knows, hey, he earns his money from what? X, Y, and Z, haram. Goes to pay the cab driver. Says, no, this is on me, man. Because see, you earn your money in this way and it's haram. That hurma, tata'adda, does it what? Extend beyond? No, because this cab driver did what? A legal, halal service. And has earned that money what? Halal. There's no barakah in it for this person. And he's sinful for the way he earned it. But me, I can take what? I can take that money because the hurma in that money, la tata'adda. So likewise here, this person does whatever they do that she says is not a halal living. But the house is what? Is property that she owns. And has it as a rental property, which is what? Legal business. How that person pays, what they pay with, that's the problem is between them and who? Allah. And there's no barakah in that wealth as it relates to what? To them. But because what she's doing is halal, then that hurma la tata'adda. Does that make sense? So I hope it makes sense to the sister as well. Huh?
Giving the halal, haram money earned, giving for charity.
There's no barakah in it for him. There's no barakah in it for him. There's no blessing in it. But if a person was poor, down in his luck, and someone offered him charity, and he knew that this person, hey, that guy does this and that guy does that. Oh, I can't take charity from him because it could be from haram. There's no basis for that. There's no There's no barakah in it for him. But the person who's entitled to it, he can take that. Go ahead.
The man who gives halal money, he's giving charity, but who has earned haram money, he will not get swab.
No, we didn't say he would get barakah. I think we did say that. That the barakah is mashuba. The barakah, this guy who did haram, he goes and pays something. There's no barakah in his paying. He goes to give charity. There's no barakah. But that restaurant owner, that taxi driver, and that poor person who needs the charity, can they receive it? Yes, they can receive it. And they'll be what? They can take this and there will be no sin. The money is not haram for them. It's haram for the one who what? Who earned it in a haram way.
Also mean the donation for the mosque of
Mhm.
Muslim institution.
What do you mean? What about it? Can the mosque take that money? طيب, if the mosque knows that the person who's giving the money, the only way they get their money is through some haram means, and they know this for certain, they shouldn't take it for the mosque. They shouldn't take it for the mosque because we have a precedent that the kuffar, the mushrikun, non-Muslims, when they rebuilt the Kaaba during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, before his risala, they wouldn't accept what? They wouldn't accept money that was made from haram. They wouldn't accept it for what? For the mosque. So because we have this precedent, we say when it comes to the mosque, we're a little bit more what? A little bit more strict, and we have more rigid standards. But as far as accepting, like I said, a gift, charity, etc., we say no. Why? Because we don't have a precedent from the Prophet. The Prophet would receive what? Wealth from people, and he never what? Asked. Do they do halal? Do they do haram? He never asked that. So again, our concern is not what? How the person earned the money. As long as the money itself is not haram in and of itself. Like we said, a pig farm, or I own an alcohol producing factory or something like that. That's the wealth that I'm going to give you. No, we can't accept it because the wealth itself is what? It's haram. Atfadal.
I got a question. So going back to the ties of kinship. So with the parents, you said even if the parents are non-Muslims, then if there's anything, you got to make sure that you obey them, not obeying them, and
Disobedience.
yeah, disobedience to Allah, right? So, but with, let's say you have relatives that fall into whatever category, and if you try to uphold the ties of kinship with them, they'll come into your house, and then they'll start doing, maybe shirk or maybe less than that, and then that when they come to your house, they'll do this. I mean, how do you?
And they force it on you.
Yeah, and they force you to do it with them, right?
Well, you can maintain the ties of kinship without them coming into your home. You can maintain the ties of kinship in so many ways. You could visit them, and you can visit them briefly when they're not doing this thing. And if they start to do it, you excuse yourself. You can maintain ties of kinship by calling, by face chatting or snap booking, right? Okay? So at any rate, you can maintain ties of kinship in so many different ways. So you find alternate method that doesn't involve them coming to your house and doing something which is what? Which is something you disapprove of or that Islam disapproves of. So you just find an alternate way. Yeah. Allah musta'an. طيب في شيء يا شباب? Anything else? Anything else? No questions? No comments? We have about 20 minutes, yeah? So why don't we, because there's a little introduction. We'll do the introduction and then we'll pray.